And this is Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio. And we have a chance to talk today to a Navy veteran, graduate of the United States Naval Academy, US Navy Reserve, and has worked in the defense industry, and now has made the transition to be a master fitness instructor. And that is David Frost. David, good to talk with you today. How are you?
Ken, I am living the dream. Thank you very much, and thank you for letting a squid be on a balanced show.
That's right. No, we're a little Army centric, but we always enjoy, and we have many friends in the U.S. Navy that we've talked to over the years, and we enjoy covering the U.S. Naval Academy, and whenever we can. And David, maybe we'll just start by mentioning that you have a new book out, and that is called Kaboomer: Thriving and Striving into Your 90s. Tell us a little bit about that, just to start, if you would.
Ken, I'd be glad to if it doesn't bore your great listeners. I will, if I may, go back to your nice comment about Navy. It is a joint world, isn't it? One of the gents that I tribute in the book, one of the reasons I wrote the book was to honor people that got me to where I am. And my college crew coach at the Naval Academy, Carl Ulrich, became the athletic director at West Point. So talk about that on one day a year when when you get that family warfare on a day in December, which hopefully will be a great day here in December 2020. But Kaboomer is a compound word. You and I are in a generation of folks in the encore chapter of our life. If the first third is learning, the second third of our life is growing, and the third is really celebrating. We're supposed to be celebrating. So what I found in my journey as a personal trainer, and having bottomed out in the happiness U curve and on the way up with grandkids and a little more discretionary time, I found that there are a lot of folks that really aren't kabooming. They're really not living the dream. They're really not reaching for the brass ring. And you start to look at why. And the answer is we get older one day at a time. And if we don't watch it, we're going to get old. You know, that classic saying from George Burns, we have to get older. We don't have to get old. So I assert, in my line in the wellness and fitness sand is, we have calendar years. How many orbits around the sun do we have, Ken? But more importantly to me is, what is our wellness or our fitness years? And a little bit of serendipity, a little bit from our parents, because 1/3 of our ability to live well is from our parents, our DNA pool. The other 2/3 is us. What can we do to lower our fitness age to thrive and strive, so that we can mess it up with the younger athletes if we're out there playing recreational football, flag football, or maybe even competing. So I wrote to try to encourage some subset of 75 million Americans to reach for a brass ring, to think about extraness, and to be better than decent or good, to try to think about being great one day at a time. So that's how Kaboomer started. When I became a personal trainer in 2012, I started to journal. I started to blog like so many folks do. And over time, I gathered enough lessons, and some of my clients said, you know, Dave, you ought to share that. So that's kind of how Kaboomer evolved.
Very good. It's a great read, a lot of good perspective in it. Now, let's just go back a little bit and go through some of the steps in your career path. Now, you said you were at the US Naval Academy, and you studied engineering and bioscience, and you were a member of the crew team there. Tell us a little bit about your Naval Academy experience.
Well, golly, I wish I was one of those guys that had stars on our lapels for being smart. I brag that I graduated in the top 99% of my class at the Naval Academy. But that's a pretty good group. You know, those service academies, I hope they're never shut down for economic reasons. I just think that the caliber, West Point having more presidents than the Naval Academy. I think the Naval Academy might have more Nobel Prize winners. Michelson is our Nobel Prize winner. But the Naval Academy, I was fortunate to get into the Naval Academy. I certainly couldn't matriculate there now. The kids are so talented and so smart. But those were the Vietnam years that you remember well, and many of your listeners may remember well. And I was lucky enough to matriculate at the Naval Academy. My goodness, did I learn about leadership? Did I learn about life? And maybe picked up a few things. But my walk to Hubbard Hall every day was the best part of my career. I was not a good student, and I was actually told I wasn't a very good crew athlete. My freshman coach kind of suggested I should go find something other to do because I wasn't getting it, and I asked for another chance. And I guess to make a long story short, the rest is history. By our first class year, my senior year, I was honored to be named the crew captain for the heavyweight crew and face some of the nation's best. We never beat Harvard, but not many crews beat Harvard. The rude and crude crew, the Harvard crew of 75, never lost a collegiate race. So in crew, we give up our shirts if we don't prevail on the victory stand. So there's some Harvard guys that have a shirt off my back, but they earned it. But it's not about winning so much. It's about learning about yourself. The Boys in the Boat is a tremendous book. I'm sure many of your readers or listeners have read The Boys in the Boat. It's a study about beating the Germans in the 1936 Olympics before beating the Germans on the battlefield of Europe. Life skills, perseverance, alchemy, teamwork, leadership. That's crew. And I'm just so honored. And that truly, as I mentioned with my allusion to Carl Ulrich, that was really the genesis for my seeing if I could help other people work on their camaraderie, their teamwork, the group hug sort of thing, you know. So
Sure.
Zany sport.
You served in the U.S. Navy in anti-submarine warfare and in the 70s, and then moved on to the Navy Reserve, and you graduated from the Naval War College. Tell us a little bit about your active service in the Navy, if you would.
Boy, those were challenging times. The Russians were coming. The hunt for Red October, many people think of that. Hey, it was true. I was an East Coast sailor. My ship, the mighty USS Paul FF-1080, where I spent most of my operational time in those years. We spent a lot of time north of in what we used to call the GI-UK gap, where the Russian submarines would come through to threaten our allies and threaten our eastern shore. So my kit, I was honored to be in charge of about 35 people and 4 nuclear weapons. We can now say that. We weren't able to say that in those days. But I was honored to work with weaponeers and sensor people to try to seek out and deny the submarine threat in a day when that was a big deal. The Cold War was scary, and I was honored to do my part as a 22, 23, 24-year-old. Tremendous experience. I remember one day, no, it wasn't September, it was October. I was able to jog around our mini flight deck. It was 22 laps to the mile. So I'm out north of the Arctic Circle, off Norway, north of the Arctic Circle, jogging on an idyllic, warm fall day, and a badger flew overhead, chased by an F-14. And I thought, this is kind of interesting. Here I am doing my little workout, 22 laps to the mile, and here's one of our amazing pointy-edge fighter planes from the John F. Kennedy chasing a Russian Badger. So, you know, it's for all those that have served, there are heady times like that. I was honored. But the Cold War, I never fired a shot in anger. I just hope I was ready. That was my argument. I was ready, if needed, to fire a torpedo and a submarine rocket or drop a nuclear weapon to deny the submarine threat. It was pretty heady times. Loved it. Loved it.
Certainly. Well, as we say, thank you for your service in the U.S. Navy, being on the wall doing that defense. Now, you made a transition. We try to talk about transition for veterans in our interviews, and your first transition was to the defense industry. You worked at companies such as Lockheed Martin, Marietta, and others. Maybe tell us about your transition from your Navy career into industry.
for me in those days, and again, I'm dating myself by sharing this is in the early 80s when I did leave the active duty forces and became a drilling reservist. My skills in the military is an extraordinarily powerful training institution, as well as a great melting pot, isn't it? For if there ever is diversity and inclusion, isn't the military pretty good at diversity and inclusion? You know, my weapons didn't care if the sensor operator was light-skinned like me or a different hue, just as long as he, in those days, but now he or she did their job. So I always thought it was great to say our Navy's colorblind. But when I left the military and went into industry, what the Navy taught me was directly transferable from using military systems to building military systems. I was honored as a systems guy to have picked up enough knowledge to help develop the next generation sensor systems for the US Navy. If and when there is another submarine threat, hopefully somewhere in the sonars of our Navy ships, there's a fingerprint that said, hey, Dave Frost had a tiny little role in building this system. So it wasn't on the front lines being in uniform, but I felt a great satisfaction in supporting what Eisenhower called the defense industrial complex.
Yeah.
It was worthy. It was good stuff.
Absolutely. And that's, obviously the submarine programs are building fast. The Virginias and the Columbia classes just got started. So a lot happening in the submarine program. Now, you made a transition from industry into being a physical trainer and into competitive rowing. And you're a master fitness instructor leading to your new book. Tell us a little bit about how you made the transition back into dedicating time to being a physical trainer.
Well, I had a little bit of a driving factor, Ken, and that is, as I got more senior and became more an overhead person in industry, many of your transitioning veterans know that, some of them are working in profit centers and some of them are working in cost centers. I got into marketing and trying to help corporate America deliver products. And even that is a young person's game. The CEO of Lockheed Martin Corporation has to retire at an age younger than you and I are. Yeah. So the driver is, what am I going to do with the rest of my life when corporate America says you're excess? Thank you very much. Bye-bye. And my passion, I learned, my passion was, got a little, I'm a New Englander and a little bit of the puritanical thing. My parents always said, treat your body like a temple. And I was able to learn a little bit about that in my military years at the Naval Academy, or running 22 laps to the mile north of the Arctic Circle. So treat your body as a temple. Wow, be fit, and maybe I'll be able to be a role model for my kids so that they can be fit for the life they have in front of them. And if you look around, there are people, there was a show, Laughing. Do you remember the show Laughing, Ken? Little Artie Johnson, lecherous old Artie Johnson, leaning over a walker and not looking very healthy. I said, I don't want to be like Artie Johnson. He's a funny guy. I'll take his humor, but I'm not going to take his physique. I'm going to learn how to keep my skeletal muscles holding me upright. I'm going to be horizontal for a long time, right? So I want to stay upright. I want to be vital. And I learned in my own story, and in fact, it's a chapter of one of the Kaboomer segments, motion is medicine. If you're moving, hey, we're not a fungi or fungus. We're not a plant. We're not a bristlecone pine, as long living as they are. We're living, vibrant, moving individuals. And being in the knowledge economy and being sedentary with screen time and, bright city lights and all that, we kind of forgotten how to move. And that's bad. That's really bad. So I'm on this little quest. In fact, I call it join the movement. There are many powerful movements, but I believe one of the most important movements that boomers like you, like me, can do is move to sweat. It's important. We actually create little cytokine streams, hundreds and hundreds of hormonal flows and chemical flows in our bodies as a finely tuned Formula One race car, except when it's not tuned. And then we get things bad things that happen, like a bat-borne SARS virus that clobbers New York City big time, and now is clobbering almost all the states in America. Who's at risk? People with blood pressure, people with pulmonary problems, people with things. Some of them are avoidable. So here I am talking about general fitness and wellness, but in a time of great strain for our country's adults, us being at high risk because we're 65. And by the way, if I can put in a plug, please get your flu shots. Unless you have a phobia about flu shots, I think this year is the year to really get your flu shot. From what I understand about how antibodies are developed, even though they don't have a vaccine for COVID, my heart of hearts tells me a flu shot is going to help your immunity. So back to immunity. What builds immunity for people your age, my age, particularly, although it relates to younger people? Humor. There's laughter truly is great medicine. Not as good as motion, but pretty darn good. In fact, a Johns Hopkins doctor suggested that motion and laughter every day is really going to enhance your chances for living longer and living better. Isn't that interesting? Motion and humor. Sunlight, vitamin D, critical. Exercise, critical. And sleep.
Yeah, so we have to remind ourselves, now with many of us working at home and doing even more hours on screen, we're always having to think about making sure we get exercise. I try and go out and jog for 30 minutes every morning. And boy, does that make me feel better to do that. And you talk in your book a lot about, stress and avoiding stress, that it steals years. Tell us a little bit about what's your thought on how to avoid stress?
Well, if I figure out the $64,000 question of how to avoid it all the time, Ken, there is good stress. I joke in the Pacific, the great ocean here, occasionally, rarely, there are shark sightings. Of course, there are more sharks than we see. But if a great shark is a great white shark is headed my way, I want good stress to get out of the water before I'm dinner for that shark. So that's good stress. It's called eustress, EU stress, episodic, adrenaline pulses, and hopefully fight or flight works. But if we don't move, if we let daily life get us, COVID, first responder for an aging parent, financial hassles, there's a drip, drip, drip. I mean, a literal drip, drip, drip of bad cortisol. I mean, hormones are great when you got to run from the great shark. Cortisol dripping and causing stress is evil. It's killing. We're going through first responder for someone who's almost 100, and it's killing my wife slowly, one day at a time. The stress and strain of caring for the greatest generation is a burden. And if folks don't find relief, exercise, laughing, getting good micronutrients like vitamin C and vitamin D from sunlight, that jog, maybe you jog in the dark to get it in, and that's another topic. Get it in whenever you can. But those micronutrients are so important to help offset the evil flow of cortisol, too much, too long, becoming chronic. But it's bad. It's a life-threatening problem for sure.
Absolutely. And you talk in your book, Kaboomer, Thriving and Striving into Your 90s, and this is by David Emerson Frost, a retired US Navy officer, a graduate of the Naval Academy. You talk about eating clean. Tell us a little bit about what's your thoughts on proper nutrition.
If I may start with a platitude, Ken, and maybe many of your listeners have heard it. The way to great abs is through the refrigerator door. It's not the pantry shelf with processed foods, and it's not we personal trainers doing our magic. We'd love to say we're the reason that people are leaner, fitter, stronger, or in the Olympic model, faster, higher, stronger. Clean eating is us. Our bodies, I'm a simple guy. As I mentioned, I graduated in the top 99% of my class. Our bodies need two things, really. Our brain needs two things. Our skeletal muscle needs two things to function over the long haul, like our paleo ancestors. That if you don't race and track down that antelope, you don't have dinner. So they invented fasting, which can be a good thing. But clean eating, I say, if it doesn't spoil and you can afford to buy natural, to buy things that do spoil, green leafy vegetables, fruit, even frozen fruits are okay. But generally, I mean, look at a food label, not to count calories. I'm not a calorie counter, but look for the evil kinds of fat, not the healthy fats, but look and see if there are nitrites in it. Bacon is not a bad thing. Bacons with nitrites are a bad thing. Preservatives are evil. Eating clean can help people live longer. In fact, there's a growing, the word geroprotection means protecting old people, gerontology, protection. There are natural, research says that there are natural foods, what I call vitamin P, plants and trees and fungi that help you offset cancer, that help you keep your blood pressure low, that help you manage your insulin sensitivity. One synthetic one, metformin, is used to help folks with adult type 2 diabetes manage their insulin sensitivity so that glucose doesn't go to fat, it goes to fuel muscles. That's geroprotection. But I always ask folks to think about, if they can afford it, think about eating clean. Things from the ground. Hopefully the ground source that you have is full of micronutrients, the water soluble, the fat soluble vitamins and minerals that you need to thrive and strive. Eating clean, easy to say, hard to do, and it might be expensive. I argue it's an investment that is worthy of it for most people. Some may not be able to afford organic and clean things from if you will, a farmer's market. But if you can, folks, boy, vitamin P saves lives and extends life, definitely.
And just listening to you, David, and your very sound advice to age in a very healthy manner through exercise, nutrition, it's got to be helpful for veterans who may be suffering from PTSD. We are always concerned about that, and I've got to think following some of the principles in your book would help a lot of veterans who are recovering from different situations in the military. They're an adverse situation they were involved in, or a physical injury that they may have incurred. How do you find these principles working with veterans?
I have a small sample set, Ken. I have been honored for over a decade to work with what used to be called the Wounded Warrior Program to get folks to come back able-bodied, but maybe banged up, traumatic brain injury or post-traumatic stress from things that I never faced. I cannot imagine rucking around in 120-degree heat in full combat gear. You cannot absorb enough water to keep your brain from overheating. I don't know how our folks do it. I don't know that I could have done it. I so tip my cover to those folks. It's tough. Cold weather is good if you're dressed appropriately. Hot weather, not good for fitness and wellness. So we get these folks back with, oh my gosh, what they've seen and heard, and hopefully they can learn how to sleep, number one, with the nightmares and things. But we did find out years ago, the House Subcommittee for Veterans realized that, we're giving a lot of drugs to many of these veterans, and rightly so in some cases, but is there innovative therapy that might augment or replace the use of drugs, polypharmacy for our veterans? And rowing was identified, like some other sports, for both social reasons, but particularly rowing is a repetitive, like cycling, and there are many very successful cycling programs for wounded veterans. But rowing, being a repetitive sport, causes folks to focus on something and to celebrate gains. The boat is gurgling, we're flowing, we're in the zone, this feels good. I don't think about the buddy I lost. So if I could, if you don't mind giving a shout out for many great programs. There are great tennis programs, there are surfing programs, cycling programs. The rowing program called Freedom Rows, it used to be Wounded Warrior, but now it's Freedom Rows, sponsored by the VA and US Rowing, is awesome. If any of your listeners are veterans that would like to try a zany sport, hey, New York City has a marvelous rowing program for youth, underserved youth, and for veterans as well.
I saw an article on that over the winter, taking children out learning to row in some of the waterways in New York City, and then helping them, pointing them on the road to college opportunities. And David,
it really, if I may just reinforce, Ken, if I may, it's more than just sweat, and it is wonderful to have teamwork or crew work. There's no I in crew. It's a team effort. It takes all of us working together, and that gets back to the boys and girls in the boat, the alchemy, the teamwork, the perseverance to learn about life and hopefully to thrive in life, no matter the color of your skin or your socioeconomic background. Really special. Arshay Cooper is a New Yorker, and he's the one. A new movie is out. His first book was Sugar Water. He was the first African American high school crew in America, supposedly. I haven't checked all the details, but Arshay is a chef, a marvelous public speaker, and he's making it his goal to get what used to be called a Ivy League white person sport into a sport for everybody. Wounded warriors, kids of color, anyone. We can all learn from it.
Terrific advice for the veterans recovering from different ailments. I want to ask you one question. That we do a series on STEM education, so important for high school students to think about and take advanced courses. I always say take as many math and science courses as you can. I wish someone had pushed me a little bit more on physics when I was in high school. And you studied engineering. We see, extraordinary engineering students at all three of the service academies when we get a chance to visit. And you studied that at the Naval Academy. Why is STEM education important for students to consider today?
Well, two things. As a minimum, two things, Ken. The world has changed. We're not an agrarian, hands-on economy. Well, our hands are on keyboards or an interface with robotics now. The world has changed to a knowledge working world, principally. I'm sure glad we have farmers that can still give us clean eating substance, but the high paying jobs almost always relate to STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. But I would put in a little plug for sometimes that hidden A, the arts. It's wonderful if these kids are extraordinarily proficient in technology, but we do want them to communicate well and have soft skills. Until the world is totally run by robots, people make the world go round. So number one, the world has changed, and number two, I believe, from my myopic view of the world, the best paying jobs are STEM jobs. And hey, part of our role in this, hate to say it, but cost of living is going to go up, isn't it? And you don't want your salary versus yours to drop at the same time cost of living is going this way. So it's just a fact of life. The high-paying jobs tend to be on a macro level in STEM. So thank you. Hey, kids, hang in there. Challenge your teachers to help them and help us by learning technology. So important. And
I really want to thank David Emerson Frost, graduate of the United States Naval Academy, naval officer, and now a master physical instructor, works extensively in rowing out in the San Diego area, the author of a new book, Kaboomer, Thriving and Striving into Your 90s. David, a final thought for us today?
I'm sorry, final thoughts? My old ears. Tinnitus from gunfire and turbine noise. Final thoughts? Thank you. Thanks very much, Ken. Thank your listeners. I'm sure they had many things to do on a Friday. If I may have one final thought, I know last Friday, although it was a Tuesday morning in 2001, I applaud the city of New York for rising from the ashes on 9/11. If there are two folks of the thousands of folks, some of whom just died from COVID, isn't that sad? You survived 9/11 and died from COVID. But if I can shout out to Lieutenant Michael Patrick Murphy, a New Yorker who gave his life and now a Navy ship is named after him for his heroism. He's a Medal of Honor winner from New York, one of many Medal of Honor winners from the Empire State. Shout out to a hero. In fact, CrossFitters still do a Murph every Memorial Day to remember a real stud that gave his life for our country. Second, this isn't a military man, but many people remember the story of the man with the red bandana. It just happens to be a Boston College grad. Our son is a Boston College grad. Wells, I believe it's Crowther, the man in the red bandana, didn't have to run into that tower time after time. He did. So, hey, these aren't dark times. These are great times. And we have people like Murphy and the man in the red bandana to help their countrymen out. So that's my final thought, Ken.
Well, that's a perfect thought about 9/11. We were actually at the commissioning of the USS Michael Murphy in New York 7 or 8 years ago. We're only disappointed that it became a Pacific ship, so we don't see it very often. But we always revere the service of Michael Murphy and the Navy SEALs and what he did to defend our country. And David Frost, again, the author of Kaboomer, Thriving and Striving into Your 90's, Naval Academy grad and U.S. Navy officer. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for your service to our country.
Oh, I wouldn't have traded it for the world, Ken. Go Army, go Air Force, go Navy, go Coast Guard, go Marines. Let's keep this country great.
Absolutely. Good to talk with you today. And this is Ken Kraetzer for Sons of the American Legion Radio. We're based at Squadron 135 in White Plains, New York. Have a great day, everybody.